Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome to the Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread. I'm coming to you from the Hance Auditorium in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we've held the last 4 bread symposiums, and as you can see, there's nobody here but me. And this is where we usually have it. The seats are all empty because this year, thanks to you, the symposium will be presented online, virtually, in our new presentation hall, which is where I will join you in just a minute. Thank you, and thanks for being part of our new virtual Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread, presented by Puratos. Welcome again. Throughout the entire symposium, I'll be thanking our generous sponsors over and over again, and ask that you do as well by visiting their booths and pavilions in the exhibitor hall. There you will see lots of bonus content, and you can also make appointments to meet with the folks from these companies that serve our baking community so well. Our presenting sponsor is Puratos, who has partnered with us from the very beginning for all of our symposiums, and it is their support that helped us get this one-of-a-kind gathering of thought leaders off the ground. Please also visit our fabulous flour and milling sponsors, Ardent Mills, Lindley Mills, and Central Milling. Thank you also to our equipment sponsors, the WP Bakery Group and Allied Bakery and Food Service Equipment. And thank you also to our specialty food product companies, Probiotine, Fire Within, Big Green Egg, and Mock Mill. Please check out all of their booths to learn about their wonderful and unique products. And also thanks to our media sponsors, Cook's Country, The Local Palate, the James Beard Foundation, and the Bread Bakers Guild of America. You'll be hearing more about all of them throughout the entire series of presentations. So again, thank you to all our sponsors. At the end of today's presentation, you will also see our credit scroll, thanking all of the people behind the scenes who made this event possible, including our production and technical partner, Ganoid Communications, our creative team at Gumbo Marketing, and the many folks at Johnson & Wales University, our hosts for this, our 4th annual gathering. So stick around if you will. But now it's time to get things rolling with today's presentation, so let's go live. And once again, welcome to the Johnson & Wales International Symposium on Bread, presented by Puratos. And hello, we are live now, and I'm coming to you from my home office in Charlotte, North Carolina. Today's a kind of a special Charlotte day because our presenter, our guest today, is also here in Charlotte. In fact, he lives only a few blocks from me, and his restaurant is, just about a 5-minute drive from where I live, and it's noteworthy. It's extremely popular. In fact, as Chef Shai Fargian is going to tell us in a little bit, it's already now expanded into other locations. And a few years ago, Chef Shai did a demonstration at our live symposium when we were on the campus at Johnson & Wales, showing people how to use a big green egg, a grill, to create these beautiful Khachapori flatbreads. And since not very many of you were there, I just was hoping and praying, and he said yes, that he would repeat that demo for all of us today. So I'm going to introduce Shai in just a minute. And before we do, I want to just make a couple final announcements before we turn it over to him. So a few of you have been asking about when can I get the handout from Professor Michael Gonsley on the sourdough, this deck of slides, and it's just been posted. If you go to the dashboard and right under the recipes or right next to the recipes, you will see next to the archive section in the dashboard, you'll see a recipe folder. In the recipe folder, we'll be posting recipes as well as these kinds of handouts. So open the recipe folder and you'll see Michael Gonsley's deck, and you can download it from there. So that's for those of you who've been asking. Now you can get it. Also want to remind you that some of you have been asking about, can we see the Q&A and chat sidebars on the presentations during the archive versions? And sadly, the answer is no, because the archive versions have to be sort of translated over to YouTube, and that they won't allow us to put those Q&As, on the screen. So you'll have to catch them in the course of the presentation itself. I usually am the one feeding the questions to the speaker or saying them out loud. So they're there, but you're going to have to take notes. Sorry about that. It's the best we can do. Technology can do a lot for us, but it can't do that one for us. Next week, reminder of next week, on Monday, when we've been talking about a lot, it's the mission to Mars. In fact, right today, in the front page of the newspaper, I saw an article saying, some of the big stories coming up nationwide are the Mission to Mars project. And our piece of the Mission to Mars project will be presented to us by Serge Amaya, who has taken the lead on the baking bread in outer space piece of the Mission to Mars project. And so we're going to get an update from him. We're going to learn everything that they've been working on and the rationale behind it, science behind it, everything. I don't think you're going to want to miss this one. And this is a project that he's been leading for a couple of years now, and it's inching closer now as we're getting closer to even sending civilians up in space over the next couple of weeks. On Wednesday, Michael Calante will join us. He's a previous symposium presenter, and he'll be doing a presentation on prebiotics in bread, making breads even better for you than they already can be. And we know this is a controversial subject, is how do we make bread the hero of the story instead of sort of the targeted villain of the story, which media would like it to be. And there's a case to be made for both sides of that argument, but he's going to show us the side that we want to hear, which is how do you make them better for us? And he'll be introducing that through prebiotics. Today, I want to thank Big Green Egg, our sponsor for this presentation and for the whole symposium, but for specifically this presentation, who has sponsored Shai to do this demo. So without further ado, I want to introduce him now. Final thing, sign the guest books if you haven't already. If you want to be eligible to receive the next prize when we spin the wheel, just go to the exhibitor hall, visit them, sign the guest books, and if you get signed in at least 5 guest books, then your name goes on the wheel, and in about 2 weeks, we'll be spinning it again and giving another prize. That said, it's my honor and privilege to introduce my friend, Shai Fargian. I'm going to turn it over to him. He's already made a wonderful video for us, and he'll set that up and tell you about it. So, Chef, the floor is yours. You're on.
Awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. This is, I think, the third. I think I missed 1 year, but this is the 3rd year I'm participating.
Right.
So thank you for having me. And I think what's really unique for me is I'm not a pastry chef, or I'm not a baker, which I know there are 2 different things. But for me, it's I get to participate in the symposium doing something that's different, which is baking on the green egg or baking on a grill, and kind of taking the whole bread journey into something that's a little less scientific and a little less accurate, but to me still very, very exciting, because we get to use live fire and a tool that's basically a grill or a smoker to create bread. Again, my name is Shai Fargian. I'm the chef and partner at Yaffo Kitchen in Charlotte. We have 3 of them. I was born and raised in Israel to parents. My mother is American. My father was born in Iran. And then as I got older, I started to be more interested in cooking. I met my wife in Israel, but she's from Charlotte. And then we did Chapel Hill, New York City, and then Charlotte. We opened Yaffo Kitchen about 6 years ago. And bread is a key component of what we do in the restaurant. So we make laffa, which Peter was a part of formulating the recipe for us. And we make about 3,000 units a day between the 3 restaurants. And we bake it as the day goes. It's a flatbread. It's almost like a naan, but a little softer. And when COVID hit and we couldn't bake bread in the restaurants and we had to bring a pre-made product, we got like raging emails from people. So bread is a big part of what we do in our restaurant in our everyday. And I think the first time in the symposium, I actually baked arlafa on a green egg in the symposium, which was really good. What we're doing today is a dish, again, that we did 2 years ago. It's called Khachapuri, and I pre-recorded the demo because, again, do it on the egg, and going a little faster through the phases. And we also recorded it outside, which I think adds another layer of here's what you could do with bread that doesn't have to be in a bakery or in a house kitchen or inside, but really getting it as a part of an outdoor experience. The green egg has been very generous and have helped us through the years on cooking on the green egg. But if you have a Weber and a baking stone or any type of grill and a baking stone, you could probably produce bread on that, which is something that's really cool for us. So a lot of it is how to create the indirect heat and how to create stable temperature to bake something that's a little more than a flatbread. That's it. I think it's a really cool concept. It's a dish that kind of like self-contained itself. You'll see it at the end. You eat it from the outside in and use the bread of the dish to eat the cheese that's in the center. So I think it's a pretty interesting dish. I know it's up and coming. There's a few Khachapuri restaurant that opened in 2020 and 2019 all over the country. And I think it's something that you guys will enjoy. So that's it. I think, Peter, we can play the video. And if anyone has obviously any questions, we'll do a Q&A at the end.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Shai Fargian. I'm the chef and partner at Yafo Kitchen in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you all for having us. Thank you, Peter, for inviting me for, I think, the 3rd year now that we're participating in this wonderful event. Today, as you can see, we're outside and we're still going to bake, and it's all going to be bread, but it's going to be on the green egg right here. It's getting hot for us. We're doing something that is very interesting to us, which is cooking outdoor on a charcoal grill. The green egg is great for grilling and smoking, but we've learned that we can also use it for baking. It holds the temperature really well and gets you a really high temperature. So if you don't have a pizza oven, or if you just want something that's a little more smoky, the green egg is great for that concept. We're making Hachapori today. Hachapori is a Georgian dish, Georgia the country, not the state. And we're gonna make, it's a boat with a bread, kind of like boat shaped or an eye shaped, and we're gonna bake cheese inside of it, and at the end we're gonna add an egg to it. So it's served either for a brunch item or for a dinner item, but it is really cool concept because there's a melted cheese in the middle and then the kind of raw or par-cooked egg yolk, and you get to break the bread and mix it with the egg yolk and the cheese and eat it from the outside in. The dough is a fairly simple dough. It's almost like a milk bread. It's very, I would say, sturdy, or it's very easy to work with. So we're going to start with the dough. We have our flour, we have milk, we have sugar, we have yeast to work with, and then we have our salt and olive oil. So we can start with the dough. We're just putting the milk and the yeast to get the yeast blooming. We're gonna add the sugar to that just to get the yeast fed. And meanwhile, we could talk about the vodka. So the traditional recipe calls for vodka in it, and I've done some research and I spoke to some people. Obviously there's a lot more knowledgeable people in the audience than me regarding to baking with vodka or any type of alcohol. Apparently what it does is the steam temperature or the boiling temperature of the alcohol is lower than the milk or the water that's in the dough, and it creates more steam earlier in the cooking process, and it actually allows us to a faster or more rapid puff of the pastry. So it gives you a little more air into the pastry when you use a hot oven, and the vodka just goes in first or activates first. I've tried it both with vodka and without. I couldn't really tell the difference in the final product, but since we are following the traditional recipe, and this is a really good vodka, so made here in North Carolina, so I figured it would be a good thing to put it in. Okay, so now the yeast is bloomed for a little bit. We're gonna add our oil and our flour. And I'm going to start that over slow to medium speed. And I'm going to slowly mix it, and at this point I'm going to add the vodka. And I'm gonna knead this for about 7 minutes. You wanna get a dough that is fairly smooth, but a little bit sticky to the touch. So we're gonna give it about 7 minutes, and then we'll pinch it a little bit and see how it is. But again, smooth, but like a touch sticky. Okay, so it's been a couple of minutes. You can see all the flour is incorporated, and I'm gonna add the salt at this point. I was always taught not to add the salt with the yeast at the same time. It could kill the yeast or affect the activation of the dry yeast. So we're adding the salt after the dough is formed. Okay, so it's been 7 minutes. We're gonna get this out, give it a little knead by hand. You can see that the dough is pretty smooth, a little bit sticky, but really not too hard to work with. This way. Very soft, really resembles almost like a challah dough, but no eggs in here. All right, so a little more. And we're gonna take this and put it in our bowl and cover it and let it proof about an hour until it doubles or a little more than that. You can also do it overnight in the refrigerator. It usually would not go over. There is quite a bit of yeast in here, but it's like I said, it's a very easy dough to work with. It's not too agile. Cool, so it's been about an hour 15. So we have our dough that's been sitting. And take it out. You see it got very fluffy, plenty of yeast in here. It's kind of warm outside as well. We just let it sit outside. And this will make a little more flour. This will make 8 individual Khachapuris. So we're gonna cut it into half. And again, it's a very rustic dish, so obviously you can measure it and make sure they're all the same, but we're cooking here on the grill. They don't all have to be exactly the same. I'm gonna cut that in half, and then cut that in half, and then roll them out. And we're gonna let them proof again, just for a few minutes until they are ready to work with. About 30 minutes until they are ready to work with. It should be ready in like 10 minutes if we put them somewhere warm. Okay, now while the dough balls are proofing, we're gonna make our spice blend. So as I said, we're gonna take the dough, shape it into an eye shape or a boat shape, and then we're gonna stuff the center with cheese. Now the traditional one is basically like a shepherd's cheese or a goat milk feta or cow's milk feta that's used in Georgia. To simulate that, what we're doing is we're going to mix 3 different kind of cheeses. So we're going to start with our Bulgarian feta. Now this is something that I get asked about at the restaurants all the time. We always use Bulgarian feta versus the Greek feta. It is a sheep's milk feta. As you can see, way creamier. It kind of like spreads almost like cream cheese or ricotta, fresh ricotta. Than Greek feta, but it also is not as dry or is not as salty. So Bulgarian feta, always. That's what we use in our restaurants. And to that, I'm going to add some low moisture mozzarella. And what the mozzarella does, it helps it melt and also helps it become basically gooey, which is really nice because then as we dip the rest of the bread in there, it kind of like all holds together instead of breaking. The last thing I'm going to add is some pecorino romano, and that gives it a little bit of depth. So it gives it a little bit of depth, and it holds it together versus the mozzarella. There's quite a high like fat content in that, and the feta, which kind of tends to separate. So I'm just going to mix this all together. Sometimes I'd add a little black pepper to it. Today I'm not going to. I like it a little more neutral, but I like black pepper on everything, so it's my favorite spice. So if you want to add it, I would add it at this point and not at the end. There's plenty of salt in here. The Romano is salty. The feta is very salty. So all we're trying to do is combine it so we can stuff the pastry in it. Let's taste it. Awesome, real good. Okay, so now the dish itself is very heavy. There's cheese, there's egg yolk, there's bread. So we're looking for something to lighten it up or something to, some acidity to break the richness. I don't know if heavy is the right word, maybe very rich with the egg yolk and everything. So we're looking for some acidity to break some of that richness. In Israel, what we do, they serve it with a condiment, which is basically grated tomatoes with a little bit of salt and olive oil. And what we're gonna do, super simple. We got some fresh tomatoes here. We're going to cut them, and you see I cut it on a bias, so the eye of the tomato is separate. So when I grate it, basically it will get into, the skin will break, will prevent me from cutting my but I don't want to get this part, so I'm going to cut it like this. And again, you can use other stuff. Sometimes people use hot sauce, anything that's a little more acidic. There's a very small place in the market in Jerusalem. It's called the Khachapuri. which is, you know, like a taqueria, but for Khachapuri. And that's where I first encountered this dish, and that's how I learned about it, and that's how they serve it. So that place brings a lot of memories to me, and their Hachapori is a little hardier than the one we're going to make today. So the dough itself has a little more crust to it, or a little more chew on the crust, but they also serve it like this. And when you go over there, you order your food, and then they bake it to order, so it takes about 15-17 minutes, but it's a little hole in the wall, so they give you a number and you go walk around the market and do some shopping and come back 15 minutes later and get your food. Okay, so we're gonna start. Like you can see, all I'm doing is grating it, and it's gonna keep the skin of the tomato in my hand, and that's what's protecting me. See how it's peeling out? So we don't want the skin, all we want is the flesh of the tomatoes. And this is a very common condiment in a lot of things in Israel. They serve this with burekas, which is basically a puff pastry that's stuffed with mostly savory items. They serve this condiment with, or with phyllo dough, like the Turkish version, the burek. We serve it with malawach, which is almost like a Yemenite version of scallion pancakes without the scallions in it. And they use, instead of butter, we use oil, mostly for kosher reasons, and because when the dish made its way into Israel, they just couldn't get any clarified butter or butter. So it's a very versatile condiment. We're just gonna do olive oil and salt, but feel free to add some red pepper flakes or anything that will make it a little spicier if you'd like it to be spicy, or sometimes people just have that, and on top of that another spicy condiment, some green zhug or red zhug, which is a again Yemenite hot pepper paste with cilantro and some garlic. That's it, I think. Yeah, that should be enough. All right, so we're gonna take this, and you can see we have this beautiful tomato flesh. It's very refreshing. Okay, so as you see, there is some texture to the tomatoes. It's really fresh. It can hold overnight, but you also don't want to hold it for more than a day or two because they start to ferment. So we're going to take this, we're going to add some olive oil to that. We're going to add some salt. And we actually did get some red pepper flakes. So I'm going to add that. Mix it. Just enough for the oil to incorporate. And again, because there's a lot of acidity in here, it should take the oil. Just got to force it a little bit. Making a little bit of a mess. All right, give it a taste. Awesome. So it's balanced, it's salty, but not too salty, and you really get the acidity and the back hint of the red pepper flakes. The olive oil is really there just to give it the flavor. It's not that it's basically used as a spice here. So you can see the olive oil. There's not a lot in there, but you want to use good extra virgin olive oil because you want the flavor of that and the acidity from the olive oil, not the actual oil. It's not a vinaigrette, it's just for the flavoring. All right, so now we have the condiment, we have our cheese blend, and I think we are ready to roll out the dough. So it's been about 30 minutes. You can see our dough balls doubled themselves inside. Super soft dough. So we're gonna take one of them and dip it in a little bit of flour, just like you would do with pizza dough. And I'm going to roll it out. So pat it with my fingers a little bit. And then I'm going to roll, so we want an oval shape. And the reason is then we're going to fold the edges to create some sort of like, almost like a stuffed crust on a pizza. And we're going to give that, so we'll have room to actually hold the cheese in, because we're going to put quite a lot of cheese in here. This is not like a pizza when the cheese is there to top it. This is the cheese, we're creating a dip inside the pastry. So I have this. Okay. Okay, so we have our peel. We're going to move the dough to the peel. Don't want too much flour on that. And as you can see, it is oval. And we're going to take this and start basically rolling the edges. And then the other side, you can see once I roll this side, I'm going to take that, and this is going to be the beginning of my other side. Okay, and here I'm going to tie it on the other. And you really want to make sure you tie it well on the corners, because otherwise it will open up. Now it's okay if you don't have that much room in the middle, because as it puffs, the sides will get bigger as it cooks. All right, so as you can see, we have our little hachapori. We want to make sure it moves before we add the cheese and make it heavier. All right, now we're going to add our cheese blend. And I'm going to talk for a second about cooking the eggs. So if you put the eggs right now, then the eggs is going to be overcooked once the bread is cooked. So like you do any type of egg in a pizza, and we want to keep a runny egg yolk, so we're going to cook this. And you don't want to put too much over, because yes, the sides will puff, but also the cheese will start bubbling and will melt. There we go. And then there are two schools of thoughts regarding the eggs. One of them says you mix the egg whites with the cheese, and it tightens the cheese together, and you bake it, and then you just top it with a yolk at the end. And the other one, which is what I'm going to do, is par bake it, and then as the bread starts browning, we're going to add the egg with the egg whites. We have some eggs from our chickens. I don't know if you can see them in the background. So these are fresh eggs, so they should firm up pretty quickly. We're going to take this, make sure it moves, yep. Put it on a green egg. Close it. And we're going to check on it in about 5 to 6 minutes. Sorry, I'm ruining your dinner plans. Not your friend, Katie's friend. All right. Does this look the same as the other one? Cool. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes, and as you can see, it's starting to brown. The grill was a little too hot, but what we're going to do, let it cool down for a second. We're going to add the egg at that point. So at this point, the bread is almost cooked, but not quite cooked enough. So we're going to take the egg and the egg white, pour it in, and I'm keeping some of the white out just because I don't want it to overflow. I'm going to make a little dip in the cheese. Yep, that's it. And we're going to put it back on the grill for about 3.5 to 4 more minutes, and depending, we want the white to be cooked, but the yellow or the yolk to be still kind of raw. So I want to talk for a second about how to set up the egg to cook on it as an oven or as a baking vessel. So it's really important. Every green egg or every Komodo style cooker has a what they call we call it deflector, or sometimes it's called a convector, which is basically a piece that creates indirect heat. So it's a piece of stone that sits between the coals and the grill grate. And that's how you use it to smoke items, or basically nothing but direct heat grilling. So we put the convector on, and on top of that we put the grill grate on, which is not touching the convector, because again, we're trying to create as much heat at the dome on the top. I'm not worried that the baking stone is not going to be hot. It's definitely going to be hot. This thing is running at a lot of times at like 500, 700 degrees. It's a little lower now as we've been opening and closing it, but the idea is to create as much heat around the baking stone and into this dome. So coals, convector, grill grate, and then we put the baking stone on the grill grate. And it's important that the baking stone doesn't touch the convector, because again, we don't want it to burn on the bottom before it's cooked on top. And then to set it up, the more air you can get on the bottom, the better. And we're opening the top because we want it to get as hot as possible. That's it. We're about ready to pull the Hachapori out. We already put the egg in, so it should be ready to go right about now. All right, this is exactly what you're looking for. You see the crust is all nice and brown, and the yolk is still runny, but the white is firm. And we're gonna take the peel and get it out. So, all right, so we have the Khachapuri. Like I said, the egg is still runny, and traditionally it's just served with a piece of butter on it, because why not? And butter makes it better. To eat it, what we're going to do is start from the outside in. I'm going to take the bread itself. You can see how runny the egg yolk is, and kind of mix that with the butter and the cheese and create a little I would say cheese pool, a little breakfast pool, and it's almost like a cheese dip inside of a bread. And we're gonna do that. Super rich, so we're gonna put a little bit of our tomato condiment. And that's it, enjoy. That's really good. Want some?
I like that. Want some? Yes, we all want some. Thank you, Shai. That was great. That was great.
Thank you.
And while we were watching it, questions have been coming in. So before I throw the questions to you, do you have any comments you want to make before we take new questions?
Yeah, so I think one of the questions I answered as it was going, they asked what the temperature was that day, because the dough proved pretty fast. I mean, we did the editing, but it was like 95 degrees that day. It was really hot. I was sweating.
Who needs a proof box?
And humidity was, not too bad, but so the dough, once we rolled it, once you ball it, you really only need like 10 to 15 minutes. But after 30 minutes, it was almost to the point of overproofing. It was really hot that day outside, but we could probably do it overnight in the refrigerator. So you could probably make the dough, proof it, divide it into the dough balls, and then just like sit it just like pizza dough. And again, there's quite a bit yeast in there. Somebody asked if the recipe will be in. I would be happy to send it to you, Peter.
Fantastic. Once we get the recipe from Chef, we'll post it in the recipe folder that you'll find on your dashboard. So just go ahead and send it to me when it's ready, Chef, and we'll put it on.
So it was quite hot, but again, you could probably make it the night before, proof it, and then hold the balls in the refrigerator until you're ready to use them.
So of course that question came in, what's the temperature of the green egg itself? It sounds like you were shooting for around 500 degrees. Is that where you want the dial to read?
So yeah, and then there's another question over there talking about the setup of the egg, which I did a small segment about it. To be honest, this small egg, we did not get as much top or dome heat as we wanted, because the small egg, we used the Mini Max. When I did it at the symposium a couple of years ago, we used the large egg, where there's enough room for the heat to come from around the baking stone. So think about an oven, obviously you want the same amount of heat from top and bottom. That's like the best thing we can get in an oven. You want convection oven, you want the heat surrounding the bread. When you use a grill, most of your heat comes from the bottom. So in the setup, our biggest thing is to separate the baking stone from the heat and to move as much heat to the top of the dome. That's why the green egg works for it, because unlike most gas grills or even charcoal grill, the Komodo style grill, you can really bring it up to 500 or 700 degrees on top, but you got to make sure that it's not that hot on the bottom. Otherwise, your bottom will burn and the top will not cook. So you do the coals, and then you do the deflector, and then you put the grill grate, and the deflector is a piece that just creates a barrier and pushes the heat to the sides. And then you do the grill net. And then you put the baking stone on top of the grill net. So I'm not even putting straightly on the deflector, because I want to create even more separation from the baking stone to the direct heat from the bottom.
So let's say, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are shooting for about 500 degrees.
So let's say that you're baking it and you feel that the undercrust is getting a little ready and done, but the top is still not there. Can you put it back into like a home oven that's already been preheating while you're
100%? And that's what we did with some of the stuff that we cooked on that demo, because we made a few of them. We had an oven set up on a broil. Actually, we heated up to 500 degrees, and then we heated up on broil because the bottom was getting really, really hot.
Right.
On the mini egg, there was just not enough space on the corners for the air to come up. Again, when I've done this before with a bigger grill, it worked way better. I regularly bake pizza on my grill at home, which is a gas grill, a Weber, on a baking stone. What I try to do is, so I have 3 burners, and I heat the grill up to like 700 degrees or as hot as it would get, and then I turn the middle. I don't put the baking stone on at the beginning because it gets too hot. I put it on about 5-10 minutes later, and then I turn off the middle. So again, to create that convection, to create the circulation of the heat and create as much indirect heat as possible. It's possible in a Weber, but again, so if you bake in a wood fire pizza oven, a lot of time at the end, you'd have to dome the pizza to get more color on the top, or to get the top a little more melted. So the same thing, you can transfer it to a home oven, or you could manipulate the grill to create the conditions to give you as much top heat versus bottom heat, which is what grills are made for. They're made for direct bottom heat. But the green egg is really good because you can really deflect some of that heat to the dome.
That's interesting. So, but because with the Komodo oven, you can't dome it, because once you open the dome, you lose all that heat. So the workaround for that, or the hack, would be have your oven standing by if you need it, heat it up, but then put the broiler on, put it under the broiler for a minute or however long it takes to brown up the top, and then you're done. And then you can bring it back to either to your cutting board or to the grill. And what I really love, one of the things I love the most about this product is the way that you tear it off and then put it into the center, and like now you got a fondue going, and you're like spitting out really cool stuff.
It's a very, very rustic dish, but it's also a lot of fun to eat it.
What are some other side dishes and garnishes that you would serve along with something like that?
So again, because there's three types of cheeses in there, we talked about it. I talked about it in the video, and they're all pretty salty and heavy. So we had the sheep's milk feta, and we had pecorino romano, and then we had some mozzarella. So it's pretty heavy. And then the egg yolk on top is also heavy. So you want things that will, sorry, you want things that will basically cut the richness a little bit, as if. So anything that has acidity or heat to it kind of like cuts it through. So the tomato grade, really, really good tomatoes are, peak of season right now. They're super, they have acidity, but they're also very sweet. And then also other hot condiments. So if you like hot sauce, that would be great, especially like fermented hot sauce, because it has that heat, but also the acidity in it. Anything that can really break that that richness. But at the end of the day, it's almost, other than like a vegetable on the side, it's almost like a big meal. You got the bread, the cheese, and the protein all in one compartment.
You mentioned also in the video, zhug is another condiment. Can you, for those people who don't know what that is, because it's one of my favorite condiments and one of the favorite things I get when I come to your restaurant, is I love that on the side, and it's spicy. But can you explain what that is for those who don't know?
Yeah, so zhug, very hard to pronounce. I kind of gave up about 3 years ago. I stopped correcting my employees. But so it's a Yemenite condiment. Yemenite cuisine. So there's a lot of Yemenite population in Israel. A lot of Jewish people came from Yemen to Israel, and their cuisine is very, very much like dough centric. So there's a lot of dough. There's a cubana, which is basically laminated butter bread that's baked overnight. And there's jachnun, which is about the same. So it's a different variation of the same dough that are either baked overnight or fried, or so they all need those condiment or fresh condiment to brighten that up. So zhug is one of them. It is a pepper paste. We use fresh pepper. Here we use jalapenos and cilantro. So it's basically fresh cilantro, fresh jalapenos, cilantro, garlic, and then there's some cumin, salt, and oil. And traditionally, you grind it in a meat grinder to kind of get the texture that's similar to what we got from the box grater. So it's a little chunky, so there's bits of pepper in there. It's not pureed, it's not smooth. And by grinding also the garlic and the cilantro, it gives it a very unique texture and allows us to taste more of the pepper and not just get a spread. So when you dip it in something, because again, most of it is accompanies doughs. So when you dip it, you don't want a spread or a complete paste, because then it will fall off your dipping bread or whatever you use. So you want to get the texture in it. So it's a cilantro jalapeno. This is what we use in the restaurant for the green zhug. And then there's a red version, which we use in Israel. The most common thing they use what's called the Sudanian pepper, which is close to chile de arbo. And they soak it and they grind it in a meat grinder. In the restaurant in Charlotte, we use habaneros with the seeds.
Is it fresh or is it dried?
Fresh. So this is it's really cool recipe. The recipe starts with 8 pounds of habaneros with the seeds.
Oh my God.
And kind of like when we make it, people start coughing in the kitchen.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's hard. And we throw it in the food processor. We have a big food processor where we make the hummus as well, so it doesn't break it down as much. And so we do the habanero, the cilantro, the garlic, and then we do a little smoked paprika to give it that some smokiness that's missing, because otherwise we'd use a smoked pepper. Or a dried smoked pepper. So we add smoked paprika to compensate for that. And the last thing we do, because it came out so spicy, we actually add fresh tomatoes to it to tune it down.
Tamp it down a little.
So green and red zhug, both hot sauce condiment, not fermented, made from fresh peppers, which is I think the biggest difference between that or like Tabasco and other. The fermentation really defines a lot of hot sauces in a lot of cultures.
I see,
In the Middle East, a lot of time we just use not fermented.
So this is not a fermented sauce though, right? This is just a fresh sauce.
No, it's sold fresh, yeah.
It's amazing stuff. And of course, if you've never had it before, start slowly because it can get pretty hot. I know I only live 2 miles from your restaurant, and next time I start coughing, I'm going to tell my wife that you're probably grinding your peppers because we can get them 2 miles away. But that it's and I put the spelling up on the Q&A. The Americanized spelling I think is Zhug, right? Does that sound
So
right?
yeah, it's so the Yemenite pronunciation is Hog, which is like really hard for me to pronounce.
Really, yeah.
So you can do it with a Z, because sometimes in Hebrew it's spelled with like the equivalent of a Z, or sometimes with the equivalent of the S. So it could be either SCHUG or it can be ZCHU.
CH. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I misspelled it for those who were watching the Q&As, but
Either way, it
get
could
the idea.
be.
Yeah, you'll see it in different. I've seen different restaurants spell it differently. Just to give you the idea, because any recipe that comes over from another country usually is going to get misspelled 10 different ways when it becomes Americanized.
I got to tell you, Trader Joe's does a pretty good job on their scoop.
They have one already pre-made, ready
They
to
have
sell.
one that's pre-made that you could buy at Trader Joe's, and
Red
it's
and green?
actually a pretty I would say not original, pretty authentic.
Is it both a red and a green version?
I think they only have the green. I've only seen the green
Yeah.
from them.
Which frankly is, I think, my favorite. There's something about in those kind of sauces, green just makes me feel like it's better for you. I don't know, you know? but at the restaurant, I get both because I want to experience the full palate. That's one of the exciting things about the flavors at your restaurant, and why I think so many Mediterranean / Middle Eastern style restaurants are opening up around the country, because the flavor palette is so appealing. There's use of peppers, there's lemon, there's the hummus and all the garlic and everything that's used in all these different dishes they just strike a note that brings pleasure to a lot of people. And for many of us who grew up with these kinds of foods, it's familiar, but many people are just experiencing for the first time and falling in love with them.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the questions as well, Peter. Sorry, I was.
No, I was just doing on a little riff there.
Yeah.
But
No, you're good.
I think the only question that we didn't answer, I think that's on here right now. Well, one was, have you just tried using a baking steel instead of a baking stone on the grill?
I have not. I have a friend of mine that has a baking steel and loves it. And he really likes it. It works for him. I don't have one, so I haven't tried it. The baking stone on the green egg, it's just there's a baking stone that's made for the green egg. So it's kind of like the right size and gives it enough space on a large egg, larger, extra large egg. It gives it enough space on the side for the heat to circulate.
Well,
like I said, to be honest, I think for the small egg, the mini max, it's just not big enough.
Steel wouldn't fit. Yeah. And of course we love the big green egg, and they're one of a couple of brands of these what's the style of oven that you call these?
Komodo.
The Komodo ovens. But yet there are other grills like Weber's and others that have lids and this and that, so you can do a lot. But part of what I love about the big green egg is I think it's just a beautiful design as well as function. The function is fabulous, but for instance, making a Khachapori with an egg in a big green egg, there's something beautifully symmetrical about that concept. And when you open the lid, there's just something that completes the experience, both visually and flavor wise. That just it just brings kind of joy. But everything every cook knows this. Anything that can be done on one tool could probably be figured out on another tool. So you just have to make the adjustments, and you have to learn your tool. So one final question before we go to the after party is, does flipping the dough from the smooth side over affect the product? So you flip the dough when you're doing the rollout. Is that just to make it easier to roll it?
Yeah, it's mostly to make it easier to roll it and make sure there aren't any seams. But it doesn't really matter. Like, again, it's a very comfortable dough to work with.
Yeah, it's not really overly sticky. It seems like it's supple, but not sticky.
Yeah, it's a very forgiving dough.
Yeah,
say it that way. And I think the part with the milk in it makes it a little easier to work with, because I don't know, maybe the texture, the milk is a little heavier than water, and so it's not a high hydration dough.
No.
So it's not too sticky. And I would actually like to ask a question back if anybody in the audience know,
Sure.
because there's people that baked a little more than me about the whole vodka thing. I found it to be really interesting, and I've done some research and I spoke to you about it, and I really don't know if there, and I've done the recipe both ways, and I couldn't tell a big difference. So I wonder if it's just like a myth. Is it like an urban legend that people say we'll put vodka in the dough and we'll make it better, or if there is something to cooking with high percentage alcohol in dough? Does it help in some way? And I don't know if anyone in the audience.
Well, let me quick before they respond, and maybe what we'll do is we'll have this discussion in the after party, because many of the people who are watching now will rejoin us there. But did you notice? Do you feel that you can taste the presence of that vodka or alcohol in the dough? And have you tried making with other alcohols besides vodka?
I've not tried any other ones, and the vodka has like a pretty neutral alcohol flavor.
Yeah.
So, and again, so if we make it, so there's 1 tablespoon in it, you divide it to 8. So it's
Not a lot of vodka.
tablespoons.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of vodka in it. So I think by the end, and then you proof it twice. So I think by the end, I couldn't really tell, to be honest. But
I think that from what I know, my understanding of the functionality of adding alcohol to a dough, like to a pie, it's often done in a pie dough, for instance,
yeah,
is that it allows you to put more fat. It will help you to hold and incorporate more fat. But this dough doesn't have a lot of fat. Is there any oil? I can't remember now. Is there oil in the dough?
there's a little bit of olive oil.
So it could be that this could be one of those local customs that just got passed on because it worked. And then if you leave it out and you forget to put it in, then you can't tell the difference. It could be that, or until somebody, in fact, we're going to challenge all of you guys to make this, do a side by side and see if you can tell the difference. Because my guess would be it'd be hard to tell the difference, but it's kind of fun to put it in, and it certainly, I think, adds a little bit more personal connection to the dough when you're doing things that are not conventional, the way that everybody else does them.
Yeah, and I gotta say, we used local flour from Lindley Mill. We used eggs from the backyard that I was in, Remy, our content manager, and we used vodka from Chapel Hill in North Carolina from Topa Distillery.
Yeah, that's
It was
a
a
new
very,
product for
very
us. local.
Other than the cheese, the Bulgarian cheese came from Bulgaria.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think all the other ingredients were pretty local.
And that's been a recurring theme throughout a lot of the presentations is that you can really reinvent or recreate these authentic traditional dishes, but in a local version by just taking the spirit of the thing and then using local ingredients and make it your own, which is kind of cool. Do you ever foresee a time, or is it just too difficult to work into production of serving these at the restaurant?
So we're what you call a cafeteria style fast casual. So you go down the line and you pick your food and you pay for it at the end. We do have, and in the last, so the I don't want to say good thing, but during COVID, that what we enable us to do is, because we transferred all of the food or all the orders to online orders or call-ins. So we actually got longer lead time to make food. So we added a whole section to the menu that's a chef's feature. And these are dishes that are cooked to order. So if you think, for those of you who are not familiar with the concept, so think about a Chipotle. You go down the line, you want your food at the end, you want it to be ready at the end. It takes you about 2 minutes to go from one side to the other side. Ours is a little more complicated. Chipotle has 6 toppings, we have about 18. But most people go from the first person they talk to the cashier in about 3.5 minutes. Anything we want to cook would have to cook for about that time. Because if you come in with your partner, friend, whatever, and they get their bowl that they just built, you don't want to wait 10 more minutes for your food. So doing it online, it helped us create a whole section of the menu of the cook to order. Also something for me, we've been having this restaurant for 6 years. First, we had to introduce what hummus and laffa is to Charlotte, and now I feel like we can go to the next step and be more progressive with our food. So we have the arrayas on the menu and other things that take like 6 or 7 minutes to cook. I still can't put anything in there that's so, labor intensive, because our line cooks won't be able to make it through the shift, and people won't wait, unfortunately. for us. But I don't know, maybe one day there's a place in LA called Tony Khachapuri that I see that does an amazing things. And they do like a lobster Hachapori, they do a black truffle Hachapori, and they diversify. They put toppings on the crust. So they do like an everything topping or sesame. So I think there's a lot of places to go with it. I don't know if it will work at Yafo at our concept, but I think there's big potential for that little pastry.
Well, we're going to have a demo in a couple weeks on Arias. You mentioned Arias, which is a whole other, similar and different, variation of what. And I'm excited that you're making them now at the restaurant. Before we break, following up on what you just said, will these hold? Let's say you made 8 of these and got them, ready to eat, but you're waiting for people to order them. Can you hold them in like a warm box for a period of time and still serve it as if it's hot and fresh, or do you lose it if you?
I've never tried, and so my model is that little place in the market in Jerusalem that I used to go to, and over there, so you order it, and they tell you come back in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And you go and you walk around the market and you're shopping, and you come back 20 minutes later, and then it's ready.
Yeah.
So I feel like part of it, I know we can, as a restaurant industry, there's a lot of things we can do to manipulate product.
Yeah.
But when it comes to baking, for me, there's no substitute to fresh bread. And that's why, like, when we make our laffa at the restaurant, we make it as the day goes. And we always have a baker in that little bakery, because when you come to our restaurant and you eat laffa, I don't want it to be laffa that was baked 7 hours ago in the morning. I want it to be at max, an hour and a half old. And we take it out of the oven. It's a 1200 degree oven. And we actually put it in coolers. We have another big brand. We use Yeti coolers to hold our bread in, to keep it hot. And we make sure we rotate it. So I've never tried it, to be honest, because I've only seen it made to order.
Yeah. Well, it adds more complexity. You already got a busy menu going there. So, but final comment, people have commented on the vodka issue, that it seems like the consensus is that the main function of vodka is that it helps to not overdevelop the gluten. It interferes with gluten development to some extent, so it makes the dough more tender. So that may be, and so it sounds logical, and so that could be the reason. And again, we'll never really know until one of you does a side-by-side experiment and report back to us and let us know, and we'll tell everybody. What I'd like to do right now, so since we've already used up more than our hour, is invite those who are coming to the VIP after party, which are most of you, I believe, to navigate over there over the next couple of minutes. Shai and I will log out of this webinar and we'll log back in. We'll take about a 3 to 4 minute break and we'll rejoin all of you there. And again, for those who aren't joining us, thank you so much for being part of this hour. And if you're watching it on the archives, unfortunately, you won't be able to hear the conversation in the after party, but at least you get the gist of it. You see how it's made. I think, Shai made it so user-friendly for us that any one of you could probably replicate this. And we'll post the recipe as soon as we can get it all from Shai. We'll post it in the recipe section on the dashboard. Shai, thank you very much for joining us for this presentation. It's been a great seeing you, even though I see you in person, regularly. It's great to see you on the screen and see you in action. And thank all of you. We'll see you back on Monday for the Mission to Mars presentation. Please don't miss that one. I think it's going to be great. And the rest of you, join us in the after party in the VIP lounge in 3 minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye, Shai. I'll see you in a minute. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. Our event technical and production partners, Ganoid Communications, including our producer, Gurmit Singh, and his team, Jita Gajaria, Gagandeep Singh, and Jaydev Kashari. Thanks also to Ted Nelson and Lael Fretzel of our creative and marketing team at Gumbo Marketing, and the many folks at Johnson & Wales University who supported me throughout this event, my executive assistant, Sarah Standifer, communications director, Melinda Law, Chancellor Mim Rooney, Charlotte Campus President, Cheryl Richards, and our executive team leaders, deans and faculty, Maureen Dumas, Michael Schrader, Michelle Nicholas, Mark Norman, Brent Steyerwalt, Laurie Heinbach, Jerry Lanuza, Amy Felder, Harry Paymiller, Richard Miskovich, and many, many others. Thank you all.